Hi, welcome back to our online preparation course for the TOEFL test. In this module, we are going to start our preparation for Part B in the listening section. Part B deals with longer conversations. There are different steps that we need to follow if we want to answer this section correctly. We have two different moments in the exam, before we listen and while we listen. And there are different steps that we have to follow in each of them. Before we listen, we have to do two things: anticipate the topics and anticipate the questions. While we listen, we have to determine the topic, draw conclusions about who, what, when, and where, and listen for answers in order. Throughout this video, I am going to give to you more information related to these steps. Let's start with the first one. In this case, we are in the step before we listen. And in this case, we are going to anticipate the topic. It is very important that before the first conversation starts, you pay lots of attention to what the narrator says. Most students do not pay attention to the narrator, and that can complicate things. I am going to give you an example of what the narrator may say. He may say, Conversation 1, questions 1 through 5. Listen to a woman talk to a friend about her vacation. If you notice, the narrator kind of told you the topic of the conversation, but most importantly, he told you the number of questions that you have to pay attention to throughout the conversation in order for you to answer them correctly. Questions 1 through 5. This will help you focus specifically on those 5 questions. Okay, so we are going to try to anticipate the topic. On your screen, you have different options for the 5 different questions in this conversation. Take a moment in order to read the different options and try to predict what the topic will be. Okay, with the options, we can determine that the topic of the conversation is going to be something like looking for a job on campus. We can determine that with words like work on campus or in the employment office. You can anticipate the topic with what the narrator told you at the very beginning, and also by reading the different options of the different questions. The second step is anticipate the questions. Okay, so by reading the options, you will be able to try to predict what question is going to be asked. Okay, so let's do the first one as an example. The options are find work on campus, work in the employment office, help students find jobs, ask the woman questions. With those options, we can anticipate the question. The question would be something like, what does someone want to do? It is important that you do not get frustrated. I mean, it is not about getting the exact question, because that is practically impossible, but at least get an idea of what the question is going to be about. Let's do number 2. The options say in the library, in a classroom, in a campus office, in an apartment. If you notice, the options mention places. So the question could be something like, where does the conversation probably take place? The options in number 3 say no more than 10, at least 20, not more than 20, up to 10. As I said, you don't have to get the exact question. It is not necessary. This is just in order for you to get an idea of what the question is going to be. So if you notice in number 3, they are giving us numbers. So the question could be something like, how many? We don't really know how many what, but at least we know that the information we need to listen to is a number. In question number 4, the options say every morning, afternoons and weekends, when he's in class, weekdays. try to predict the question. Okay, so if you notice, the options refer to time, to days, to frequency, right? So we can determine that the question may be something like how often something. We don't really know what, but they are asking us about the frequency of an activity. Okay, let's continue with options in question 5. Okay, so let's try to anticipate the question. So we have A, fill out the form. B, give her some additional information. C, tell her some news. D, phone her. So in this case, the question could be something like what to do. For example, what does the woman ask the man to do? As I said, do not get frustrated if you cannot figure out the exact question. Okay, the important thing here is that you get at least kind of an idea of what the question is going to be. Okay, so after we have already anticipated the topic and anticipated the questions, let's continue with the second moment, that is while listening. Now we are going to determine the topic. At the moment that the conversation starts, you can start determining the topic. For example, on the recording you hear, "You can't believe what I just got. I bet you got that new car you have always wanted. Now, how in the world did you figure that out?" Okay, what do you think the topic is? We can say that this is the beginning of a certain conversation. The topic of this conversation is the new car that the man just got. Okay, you can figure out the topic with expressions like the new car that you have always wanted, right? Okay, so let's listen to the beginning of our conversation and let's determine the topic.
The first part of Conversation 1 is,
I'm looking for a part-time job on campus.
what is the topic of Conversation 1?
Okay, so if you notice from the beginning of the conversation, we can determine that the topic of this conversation is looking for a part-time job in campus. Okay, so now we already have our topic. What is next? We have to draw conclusions about who is talking, what are they talking about maybe, when did the conversation take place, and where maybe did the conversation take place as well. Okay, so let's read this conversation. On the recording you hear, "Why do you have so many books? I need them for my paper on George Washington. Do you know how I can check them out? Yes, you should go downstairs to the circulation desk and fill out a card for each book." So let's try to draw conclusions about the who, the where, and the what. Okay, so according to this conversation, who do you think is probably talking? Okay, maybe we can say to students. Where are they? Well, because of expressions like check them out and the circulation desk and fill out a card for each book, we can draw a conclusion that this is happening in a library. Okay, what course are they discussing? Because of the phrase my paper on George Washington, we can determine that the course that they are discussing is American history. Let's listen to the conversation and let's draw conclusions about who and where. Who is probably talking and where does the conversation take place?
Listen to the beginning of Conversation 1 and try to imagine the situation.
I'm looking for a part-time job on campus.
Then you've come to the right place. The Campus Employment Office is here just to help students like you find jobs on campus.
I'm glad to hear that, because I really need to start earning some money.
Number 1. Who is probably talking? Number 2. Where does the conversation take place?
According to the conversation, we can draw the conclusion that a student and an employment office worker are talking. Where does the conversation take place? In the campus employment office. So again, after you determine your topic, it is important that you draw conclusions about the who, the what, the when, and the where. This is going to help you imagine the situation and put yourself in the context of the conversation to understand better.
Listen.
What happens next? After that, we listen for answers in order. This is something that is very helpful in the TOEFL test. The answers are most of the time in order. So for example, on this conversation we have, can I help you? I am interested in opening an account. Well, we have several different types of accounts. Checking accounts, saving accounts, money market accounts, time deposit accounts. It's a checking account that I am interested in. I can help you with that. First, you have to fill out a form, and then I need to see some identification. That's about all there is to it. That sounds easy enough. Thanks for your help. So if you notice, the first question is, what type of account does the woman want? Look at the options and try to answer the question. Remember, the answers are in order. The answer for this question is letter A, a checking account. If you notice, the woman answered, it's a checking account that I am interested in. Question number 2 asks you, what does the man need for her to show him? Look at the options and try to answer the question. Okay, the answer for the question is a piece of identification. Why? Because he said, and then I need to see some identification. So if you notice, the answers are in order. That is very, very helpful. So now, let's follow the different steps that we need to follow in the exam and answer the questions, the exercise that you have on your screen.
Conversation 1. Questions 1 through 5. Listen to the following conversation about a part-time job.
I'm looking for a part-time job on campus.
Then you've come to the right place. The Campus Employment Office is here just to help students like you find jobs on campus.
I'm glad to hear that, because I really need to start earning some money.
Let me ask you some questions to help determine what kind of job would be best. First of all, how many hours a week do you want to work?
I need to work at least 10 hours a week, and I don't think I can handle more than 20 hours with all the courses I'm taking.
And when are you free to work?
All of my classes are in the morning, so I can work every weekday from noon on. And of course, I wouldn't mind working on the weekends.
I'll try to match you up with one of our on-campus student jobs. Please fill out this form with some additional information about your skills and leave the form with me today. Then you can call me back tomorrow and maybe I'll have some news for you.
Thanks for your help.
Number 1. What does the man want to do? Number 2. Where does the conversation probably take place? Number 3. How many hours of work does the man want per week? Number 4. When can the man work? Number 5. What does the woman tell the man to do tomorrow?
Okay, let's check our answers. The first answer, question number 1, is A. Find work on campus. Number 2, where does the conversation take place? In a campus office, that is letter C. Number 3, the answer for the question is not more than 20. If you notice, as we anticipated the question, they were asking us for a number. Number 4, do you remember frequency? The answer is afternoons and weekends. When can the man work? And the last one, phone her. No? What did the woman ask the man to do? Okay, so now it is your turn. Go to the practice section. Don't forget to follow the different steps in order to answer this section correctly. See you next time.